Are you with me?
Yes.
Are we one?
Yes.
We are. Ah, retirement. Retirement is freedom. It's freedom to travel, to rest, to play. It's time for recreation. It's a time for recreation. It's a time to wonder, to think, to ponder on what has been and what shall be. And to take a look at one's values. What is it that you value in life? And I've done this. And one of the things I value is what you value so highly. And that's unity. That's what I've discovered. And so enter Bob Fortner, who calls me up and says, would you speak at the region? And then I say yes, and then he makes a mistake. He says, you can talk about whatever you want. You may regret that, Bob, you may. But I decided I want to talk about unity. I want to talk about what I value, and I know what you value. I want to talk about the future of unity, and I have this intriguing title that says, does unity have a future? And so I'm lost in my own thoughts, and I'm thinking about the future of unity. And then I'm in prayer and meditation one evening, and a still small voice says, why don't you talk to some other people? I said, okay. So I talked to our leaders. I talked to Donna Johnson, our leader at the time. I talked to Jim Blake. I talked to unity ministers. I talked to licensed teachers. And I talked to congregants. And I talked with them not so much so that I can quote what they said, as much as I just want what they say to just impact me in some way. And I found some things. I discovered some things. One, when it comes to the future of unity, it's very clear that the principles upon which we stand are eternal truths, and they will always endure. It's always there and always shall be there. So that's clear in our minds. But the future of the unity movement, and in particular the field I learned in talking to people, is not quite as evident. And there's actually statistics to back it up. For instance, I went to Unity Worldwide and I asked them some questions. Here's what I discovered. From 2015 to 2019, just a number of months ago, 63 unity ministries have dissolved. They are no more. During that same period of time, 43 ministries have come into being. However, only 12 of those are what we would call churches or centers. The vast majority of them are alternative ministries. And I say to you, and I think you know it, you can do some math. That's not sustainable. Now that's only 4 years. And that may not be an ongoing trend. But it may be. And if it is, it's not sustainable. And so, in my investigation, Bob, just turning me loose on this, there you are. I've got 4 categories I want to talk to you about tonight. And I hope we have time to chat with you about those 4. And I also have some kind of thought starters, and I'll set them out here afterwards, after we're done, so you'll have the opportunity to take a look at those, and maybe you want to, over breakfast or something, you're talking with one another, just talk about that. I'm currently talking to a region, and you and I have about an hour and a half, and I may have a day and a half with a region for us to begin to explore some of these ideas. So the 4 categories are go deeper, rise higher. Second is the aging of the movement. The third is leadership. And the fourth is unity in unity. So, you ready to go deeper, rise higher? Let's go back to our beginning. Charles Fillmore, the original vision for unity. What is unity and why are we here? Take a look at this. It comes, by the way, the next slide there, Bob. I got this out of this book called Prosperity. What is unity? Unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus Christ. Our objective, our why, our mission is to discern the truth in Christianity and prove it. And the truths he's talking about, he says a little bit farther along in that little statement, is that they are the eternal truths that are taught by Jesus. And so, for me, when I look at this, at least in Charles Fillmore's mind, it makes unity distinctly Christian. We're discerning the truth in Christianity and to prove it. And I know that's an idea that it rages within the movement now. You get a bunch of ministers together, you sit down and ask what is unity, you don't get the same answer. And that's okay, but that's kind of where we are right now. But this is going back to that original vision for unity. It's a link. And an educational movement is to discern the truth in Christianity and to prove it. And so what we do is we go outside of unity for help, to get some clarity, to be able to go back and look at Christianity to discern the truth that's there. And then there's always a challenge of how in the world do we prove it and live it. So we go to the Gita. We go to Eastern religions. Today we may go to quantum theory. We may go to psychology. We can go to Rumi, to Maurice Nicole, Course in Miracles. We go all these different places, but if we're true to this vision, then we let those impact us, and then we come back and we try to discern. It's like, you've all heard it. Make a Baptist a better Baptist, and a Catholic a better Catholic. So that's part of the original vision for us. When I think about the Fillmores, I think above all, they are explorers of the kingdom of heaven. That's what they are. And that you will see, at least from this man's perspective, that may be one of the keys to our future. Explorers. So hold that thought. So, what happened with unity? There's this new understanding of eternal truths that are emerging, and it starts out in the silence, doesn't it? The Society of Silent Unity. And so the Fillmores call for people to come and do what we just did, which is to sit in the silence together. And they're all over the country. You remember the story, they designated a certain time, and then the farmers wrote in and said, no. We're asleep then. We got to get up to be in the field. So they adjusted the time. So we began in prayer, in that aspect of our movement. And then the educational dimension began to become of great value. And so we have 9th and Tracy, we have Unity Farm, becomes Unity Village. And then we have the centers and the ministries. And that's a real quick tracing of history, isn't it? And it brings us to here and now, in this quickly changing world. All kinds of things. But here's one of the things that's happening. All these precious truths of ours, many of them that we tend to call our own, they are emerging everywhere. Have you noticed that? It used to be psycho-cybernetics, power of positive thinking. It's a secret. Prayer meditation, it's transcendental meditation, it's centered prayer, it's mindfulness, it's oneness meditation. All these principles are just showing up everywhere, which begs the question, are we done? Have we done our work? And so these principles that are precious to us, they're there, and humanity is beginning to embrace them. So what about us now? Where are we? We have lost our uniqueness. Because we used to be on the leading edge of spiritual exploration, but no more. And that's maybe that's a good thing, right? Because now so many people are beginning to embrace that, and that's good for us, I think. But we still are left with this question of what is unity, why is unity, what are our unique gifts that we can give to a troubled world? And I think those questions have to be answered as a movement. What are we? Why are we? What are our unique gifts to the movement, to a troubled world? And I don't think we're going to be as effective as we can be until those questions are answered and we have a certain focus around those answers, and then we can go forward from there. So I think now we're doing some meandering. We're kind of a conglomerate. When I look at unity, somebody ordained in 1976, and I look at it, it's a conglomerate. It's psychology, it's mental science, it's quantum theory, Course in Miracles, it's Eastern religion. It's all over the place. And maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But maybe not. Maybe not. I think we have forgotten that we are explorers. And we need to get back to being explorers and be on the leading edge of spiritual exploration for humanity. And I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. So what we do is we look at the world and it's changing, and we think we need to change and adapt, and we certainly do. Winston Churchill says, you either take change by the hand or it will take you by the throat. And that's true. But our first thought should not be, how do I change and adapt to the world that I'm in? For us, I don't think. I think the first question we have to ask is, how can I get back to being an explorer? I need to remember what I am, that I am an explorer above all. We need to lead the change and not be dragged by it. But here's a statement for you. We are destined, if we are not to perish, to once again be explorers of the kingdom of heaven, to go deeper, to rise higher in prayer and meditation, Jesus' teachings, mental science, love, forgiveness, Bible, to see what people have never seen before. See the next slide. I'm calling us to go deeper and rise higher. And Emily Dickinson said, we never know how high we are until we are called to rise. And then if we are true to plan, our statures touch the skies. I think we need to remember that we are explorers and get back to that. And I'll give you some examples in just a few moments about going deeper and about rising higher. One of the things about Jesus that was so remarkable wasn't that he walked on the water or the healings or the feeding of the 5,000 or calming the wind. That wasn't the thing that was astonishing to the people. Scripture tells us what was astonishing is that he spoke with his own authority. And that's what we must do. We speak with our own authority. Because the revelation is not over. It's infinite. It's always moving. It's always there for us to grasp and to go forward with. Word of caution. If we become explorers, we will be on the tip of the arrow. And the tip of the arrow is small. It's not large. When you're on the tip of the arrow, you can see where you're going. That's good. When you're in the body of the head of the arrow, you can't see where you're going. I think that's sort of where we are. We need to be on the tip of the arrow so we can see where it is that we are going. Next slide. Emerson, and I've got the date, it was May 11th, 1852, Concord, Massachusetts. Emerson was introducing a speaker, and these words were within his remark. Everything great and excellent in the world is in minorities. And I know we've always wanted to be big. You know, we were the big churches and big, and you know, it may not be our destiny. Our destiny may be to be on the leading edge of that exploration, to be on the tip of the arrow. So we won't be big necessarily if we're spiritual explorers, if we're part of the minority when it comes to that. But, and I've got a statement in here for you somewhere. We won't be large, but we're going to make a large impact. And from where we stand, we will see the emerging body of humanity embracing a new understanding. So I think we're sort of in the crowd there. Everybody else they're embracing it all. We don't like being in the crowd. We're not destined to be in the crowd. Somebody has to be on the leading edge of exploration. We have been for a long, long time. And maybe that's where our destiny lies, to go deeper, to rise higher. So I want to give you an example of going deeper and rising higher. Wondering, who deserves a $50 bill? A treasurer, wouldn't you know it? Come on up here. Now, you should know this, but is that real money?
Yes.
It's yours.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
I accept my good.
Okay. Let's give her a hand here. A lot of illustrations flow from this, a lot of things for us to talk about. But I had two. First, why wasn't everybody's hand up? I said, who deserves $50? How will you experience the richness of the kingdom of God if you don't deserve $50? That's the first one. And for some of you, you know that I could have held that up there, and somebody could have held my arm up, and you never would have got your arm up. And that's your point of growth right there. So that's one. And then is Mindy, is that right? Is it Mindy? Here's next question. And this one's key for us. Who demonstrated $50? You're afraid to answer, aren't you? Who demonstrated? The mainstream of new thought is that Mindy demonstrated $50. Because our thoughts are, the new thought is, you demonstrate when you get something. When you get $50, you get healed, you get a new job, you get yourself in a relationship, you get this, you get that. And so when you get something, you make a demonstration. But we need to go deeper and rise higher. Because we're one of the few spiritual disciplines on the planet that actually talks about prosperity. We have prosperity principles that we teach and adhere to, and yet we struggle with prosperity. Unity Headquarters struggles, Unity Worldwide does, ministry struggles, ministers struggle, people struggle. They struggle with it. And so maybe we need to go deeper and rise higher. Just maybe. What would happen to the unity movement if we changed it around? If going deeper and rising higher meant demonstration wasn't when you got something, it's when you gave something. So what I'm thinking is, Mindy didn't demonstrate $50. I demonstrated $50. And am I less now because I did that? I had certain assets when I got here. I don't have them anymore. $50 left. Am I less? No, I don't think so. That's what I mean. We've got a whole body of prosperity teachings, and maybe we need to re-examine them. Maybe we need to go deeper and rise higher. Let me give you another example. Law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind, produce after the kind. And we think of that meaning, that we think of that as a relationship between thoughts and our experience here, and that's certainly true. But the law actually says thoughts held in mind produced after their kind. It says you think this way, you're going to get more thoughts along that same line. That's what it really says. And those thoughts will become attitudes and beliefs, and they will become a glass or a consciousness through which you then see your world. That's what's actually happening. Take a look at one word in that great law, thoughts held in mind. There's a couple ways to hold this book. Here's one. I'm holding it. And that's often the way we approach our affirmations and denials. We grip them, we affirm them, we sing them, intone them. It's repetitious, is it not? That's what we do with them. We do it in the sense that we know what is true. But here's another way to hold the book. This way. This is one in which you rest with your precious affirmation and denial. And then this one is an invitation to knowing. This one is you know the truth and you affirm it. This one is an invitation for the truth within that affirmation and denial, all its subtleties, all its wonders to be revealed to you. That's what I mean by go deeper, rise higher. What would happen in the movement if manifestation was none of our business? What if that really wasn't what it was about? What if it was about something else? What if nothing needed to happen? Those kind of mystical approaches to our spirituality. What in the world would happen to us? Well, what are we destined to become? Here's a statement. Explorers of the kingdom of God, creating a proven body of knowledge and shared experience that reveals a way of life that works for all. We are strongest when we are not like others. We are strongest when we are ourselves. We are at our best, not when we cope with change, but when we help create it. And we're going to have to cope with it, adapt to it. We're doing that. And electronically, technologically, it seems to me, we're doing a pretty good job. But maybe there's something else we need to do. One more comment before I move on to another possibility for us. Heard a lot of conversation about trends in ministry and that people are falling away from churches. And that's happening everywhere within the nation. And many of us, I think, are just sort of accepting it. That's just part of the trend of what's taking place. And I would say to you, when it comes to some of the fundamental religion that has a concept of that's a sacrificial God. You have to sacrifice Jesus to that God, and you can be saved if you believe that, and a physical place for heaven and hell and a devil that's an entity, all those kinds of things. As humanity becomes more illumined and more educated, that's just going to fall away. And so that trend of people falling away from church, I think it's natural. You could predict that taking place. But the question, I haven't landed anywhere with this, but what about us? That's not us. Our theology and approach to spirituality is different than that. So maybe our falling away and our ebbing and some of the dissolving of those churches, maybe it's not because humanity is just falling away from church, because maybe it's another reason. And I'd like to investigate with you a couple of other possibilities of what might be our challenge. So are you ready to take a look at the aging of the movement?
Yep.
You want to flip that up there? Oh, here's one thing. I forgot. We'll leave that for now. Is there another one? What do you got? No, you went too far. Go on back. Go back. Oh, okay. Maybe it's not there. I want to talk about it anyway. The aging of the movement. Look at us. It's moving It's aging, isn't it? Yeah. And I get to travel around speaking, and I look at the congregations, they're aging too. How many ministers in this room are less than 30 years old? Chronologically, yeah. How many are less than 40? How many are less than 50? You're kidding me. I don't even want to say the other one. I'm not even going to say it. Why is this? What is it that's happening? Here's a statement, a question. How can we be relevant in today's world, to today's world and its people, if we do not have among us leaders and seekers who were born of the world in which we are trying to serve? I'm saying, where are the young ministers? Where are the young leaders? Where are they? I want to be a little harsh, but you know I have a loving heart. We are totally blind to this. We are blind to it. Let me give you why I say that. Because as I interviewed people, I had a whole series of questions. And I held off always this idea about youth and about kids and those sort of things. I held it off. With everyone I talked to and interviewed, we talked about it. Every person. But of all the people I interviewed, one person, without me bringing it up, brought to my attention ideas about children, about young ministers, about the aging of the movement. So we are blind to that. Back in my day, in 1976, my class, just off the top of my head, without looking at a picture of us, there were 12 of us that were less than 30. Let me read you some names. Jim Rosemergy, Howard Caesar, John Strickland, Connie Fillmore, May Cahall, probably someone you don't know, Adrian Thomas, John Sayanick, Bob Barth, Susan Downs, Pearl Davis, Edie Skalitsky, Sue Kelly. Most of those were less than 30, may have a couple of them that are a little bit older than that. We have done this to ourselves, in my opinion. And I've been talking to people about this for a number of decades, to no avail, but Bob gave me this opportunity, so I'm here, and you may never see me again. But you know what we've done? We've driven the age of the applicant upward. We've driven it upward. You realize you have to almost be a licensed teacher before you can even have the possibility of entering ministry or applying for ministry. To be a licensed teacher, I'm guessing $7,000 maybe?
Yes.
And that's just to get you in position to the point where you can do that. So we have this thought in mind that you've got to know all this stuff before you get to school. No, you don't. You don't. You know how many unity classes I attended before I went to ministerial school? Not 3, 0, none, not a single one. You know how many unity church services I had gone to before I went to ministerial school? About a half a dozen. That was all. Now, admittedly, unity was desperate in those days.
Still are.
Yes, must have been desperate. And we don't need a bunch of Jim Rosemergys running around the place. But I'm telling you,
Maybe we do.
we need to find a way to open up the admissions so that young people can be a part of this experience.
Yes, absolutely.
What we've done is we've created a situation where we basically have people that are closer to retirement than they are to their 20s. That's what's happened. And we have people that are ordained and then they're not going into the field, they're going into alternative ministries. They want to make a difference. They have things they have to say. They want to teach, but they're not going into the field. Back in my day, if you didn't go in the field, you didn't get ordained because we needed people in the field. We needed them to actually be there. Some people don't want the responsibility of a ministry. They want to teach, but they don't want to teach a board, which is part of the experience. A couple of things happen. Let me just say this. For those that are more mature, that are entering ministry, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm on fire about. I'm on fire that we've shut the door on the young ones. We need to find a way to get them in there, because when we don't have that, here's what happens. You have, say you're ordained, you're 55. You have less time to serve. And you may serve till you're 55 or 65, maybe 10 years, maybe 10. You know, it takes 5 years in ministry to be somewhere before your consciousness even takes root. You don't even really make an impact until you've been there 5 years. So you have less time to serve, and you have less time to develop a ministerial consciousness. Because there's a real difference between somebody that's been a minister for 10 years and one that's been a minister for 40 years.
Yes.
There's a remarkable difference between the two. And so when you're ordained at 55, you're probably not going to serve for 40 years. Not going to happen. And so we need to do something about that. We have forgotten something. See if we can have that up there here now. Most of what you learn about ministry, you learn after you leave school. And every single one of you that's in ministry, you know that is the absolute truth. You learn it when you get out. So valuable in there. But we need to create a consciousness there of explorers. And then the explorers can go forward and go from there. So it's a powerful way to approach things, I think. So the first step is the admissions process. I think we need to take a look at that so we are attracting young applicants. And, you know, we might take a page out of Temple Hayes, her ministry. From what I understand, with Temple, she actually has a teenager on her board. Wow. Wow. That person can see things I'll never see. I'm done. I can't see that. I can't see it anymore. Once they say it, I can see it, but I can't see it before. Just the way it is. So, we need to make some changes there. And these young people, they want to be on the tip of the arrow. They want to create a tipping point. They'll be the ones. We need to bring them in. They'll attract the young people when they come as well. So let's take a look at another subject. How you doing? Okay? Leadership. I've been a leader all my life. I don't know how it happened. I was a senior patrol leader when I was a Boy Scout. I was leader on teams I played on. Captain of the tennis team and all those kind of things. I was in the military, had training in leadership. Was a leader there, in combat, so forth. And then I was in ministry. I was president of the Association of Unity Churches, executive vice president at Unity School. So it's always been there. And so I'm at a regional conference in Hamilton, Ontario. And it's a regional, it's the Northeast region. Alan Robotham is there. I think I'm probably the reason I was there, I was the president of the association. So I'm in this leadership position. We're in a big circle, and Alan speaks. I don't remember what the context was for him to do so, but he stood up and he spoke to us. And he said, you know, being a minister is not about teaching. It's not about being a pastor and being with people in their pain and in their joy. He said, you'll teach. You will be with people in their pain, and you will be with them in their joy. It's not about counseling, although you will do all those things. He says, it's not that. He said, being a minister in the field, in a ministry, is being a leader. It's leadership. Now, here's the remarkable thing. He said those words, and some of you may be in that condition right now. He said them. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had been a leader all my life. I was in that position at the time. He's speaking about leadership. That's what being a unity minister is, and I have no idea of what he's talking about. And I'll tell you, it took me, I never forgot it. I respected him immensely. I never forgot. And it took me 15 years, maybe more, I'm embarrassed to say, before I understood what he's talking about. And we've got challenges around that. It's not the fault of the ministers. It's we don't have the training. When I was in ministerial school and I look back at my training, how many leadership classes did I have? None. I didn't have a single one. And I was being sent out to lead a ministry. Let me give you some examples. Not too long ago, I was speaking. I was at a ministry, and I had never met this minister before. And the individual was a complete delight. I just loved him. I could have sat down and we could just talk for hours. They were just a wonder. And they had up on the platform their interaction with their congregation. They were exquisite. But they had told me before the service started that not long before, or just a week or so, they had shared with the congregation that they were, this person was going to have to go to half-time. They were going to be part-time ministry, from full-time to part, because they didn't have the money to pay the person, and they had to get a job. And I got the impression it was the first time, or close to it, when the congregation knew there was a financial difficulty. It was the first time. And I asked her, what's the problem there? Is there lack of money? Lack of consciousness? No. Lack of leadership. That's the problem. Contrast that with Fort Myers. I'm in Fort Myers. We're in a house. We have two buildings on campus. We're in the house. We rent the larger building to a Montessori school. They pay us $2,500 a month. And then they're having difficulty paying that. And they end up leaving. And they consolidate with another school, and off they go. We're bursting at the seams anyway. And so we go into the other building and we rent it, or renovate it, and now we have a space that holds 220 people. So all's well. Except we have $2,500 coming in, and 1 month, and the next month it's not there. And next month it's not there, and it's not there, and there is some concern, and I'm concerned. And so I'm meditating one night, and I hear that darn still small voice. And it says, Jim, why don't you do your job? What? Why don't you do your job? And I realize what he's saying. I'm not doing my job. My job is the leader, one of my functions, and most, according to Alan, the most important function is I'm there to lead the congregation through the challenge, all the challenges, but in particular, this one. And so, I got a prosperity plan together. And a couple weeks later, when everything came together, I shared it with the congregation. I thought I'd share with you some of the high points, just kind of sharing things at work. How are we doing here? Okay. See, I lost my train there. Oh yeah. So when I sit up on Sunday morning and I'm going to share this prosperity plan, first thing I do is I apologize to the congregation. I tell them what happened in prayer and meditation with that darn old still small voice, and where he says to me, Jim, do your job. And I apologize because I wasn't doing my job. I said, now I'm doing my job. I have a prosperity plan. I want to share it with you. And I'd like you to join me. And so I shared that plan with them. And we came through that challenge. Understand? Yeah. That's the key. I thought, would you like to hear part of that plan? What it was? Would you like to hear? Yeah. Just very quickly. It had 500 parts. No, it had 5 parts. It had 5 parts. And the first one was the power of prayer. In our ministry, we're really big into refrigerator magnets. So we had a refrigerator magnet made up, and we had a statement everybody could focus on. The very next week, in the middle of that week, we had a prayer service. Everybody to come together to begin to address it in prayer. And about a Saturday or so later, we had a prayer vigil. So it was from 8 o'clock in the morning till like 5 o'clock at night, a prayer vigil. And everybody was given a prosperity bank, so they began the process of giving and blessing the coin and working with that. So that was the first part. Second was the power of Thanksgiving. Everybody was given a pastel slip of paper about this big, and they were to write. They were given 3, and they were to write on each one something they were thankful for. 200 people, 600 links of a chain. We gave the change to our children. I was shocked. The next week they came back. It was all put together. 600 links. We hung it in the back of the sanctuary, and it stayed there for years as a reminder to us about the power of Thanksgiving. We also did the power of the purge. We simplified our lives, and we engaged in something called a circulation day. It's like a giant garage sale, except we give everything away, and none of it goes to us. It only goes to the community. So that was the third one. The other was the power of communication. I did a workshop on a great book called Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. So we were going deeper and deeper with some of the principles. And every Sunday morning I would walk out with a microphone into the audience, and I would say, tell me what's happening. What's happening? What kind of breakthroughs, what kind of insights are coming? How are you feeling more safe and secure? And people would stand up, so they were communicating with one another. And then finally, the power of giving. And the way we did that, we increased our giving to a food bank. That's the first thing we did. And the second thing was we engaged, and I know many of you have done this, we engaged in an unexpected income project. And so we were engaged in that, and half of that income went to the ministry. So there it was. And we moved on through that challenge that was there before us. So, let me just say, I think, personally, in the ministerial training, leadership needs to be front and center, because that's what we are out in the field. We do lots of other things, but leaders aren't born, they're made. And get that training. That's one place. It needs to be there for those that are coming up. The second thing is for all of us out here that haven't received the training, our intentions are exquisite, but we don't have that support. We need the support from Unity Worldwide. And in our conferences, for instance, we need to be able to do that. We need to have people like me and others that have been there, they need to stand up and share about leading congregations through certain challenges. So regional conferences, national conferences, training for us needs to come front and center. I think it'll make tremendous difference. And while we're on the subject, I've got a number of categories of different things about leadership, and I want to share a little bit with you. And I don't think we'll get to unity and immunity today, but this is important. So I want to talk to you about that. But while we're on the subject of like prosperity, you know, one of the things I don't think we as a movement and as ministers, I don't think we know how to talk about money. I think it scares us. And we're so afraid that when we go to talk about it, the congregation, somebody in the congregation or somebody's will say, oh, you're just like all the other churches. If you begin to talk about money, even if you do it from a powerful spiritual perspective, I'll say this to you, people will still say, you're just like all the other churches. That's what they'll say. And that can't stop you. Because we've got some powerful principles and help when it comes to that. Like when you're in a board meeting, and you have to train your board. When you're in a board meeting and somebody says, you know, if we just had $5 more, if everybody just gave $5 more, we just have all the money that we would need. As soon as that is said, there's a major problem, because that person thinks the congregation is the source and their money is the supply, and it is not. God's the source, and in my perspective, an awareness of that source, that is the supply. And then other things begin to come from that. We had Charles Fillmore talking about money. He says it's our instrument. Eric Butterworth said we don't need money. Money needs us. And that's the truth. Here's a $20 bill. I'll slide that up here. Step back from it. This is a different illustration. But look at it. What can it do? You know, little dance, sing me a song, do something, say something, do something, anything. It can't do a thing because it needs me. It needs you. Radical generosity. Radical generosity. I discovered that when we were engaged in our building a new building, sanctuary. And let me just share that with you, what it goes. Because we had to talk to people about spiritual principles and about money and all of it. But what happens with radical generosity is you determine what you're going to give, and you keep pushing that until your ego pushes back. You're looking for that. You want that. You keep pushing, and it pushes back, and it says, you can't do that. Here's what I heard. If you do what you're thinking about doing, you won't have the retirement you want to have. That one got my attention, and I had to wrestle with that one for a while. So you keep pushing, it keeps pushing you, and you keep pushing forward. Jesus talked about this. He said, blessed are you when men revile and persecute you for my name's sake, for the sake of spiritual growth and breakthrough. He says, you're blessed because you're going to get pushback. The men being something within you, obviously, metaphysics, and it's going to persecute you. Absolutely, it will. You're looking for it, you want to see it there, and that's where you have to push and take one more step. Take one more step, and you will burst into a consciousness of peace, and into a consciousness that you have never been in before. And you will be free, and you will never go back. That's the radical generosity. That zone in there is where the work is done. So you want it to come. So let me just share, if I can, how's our time? How you doing? You okay?
Keep going.
Okay, I know you get a minister or a microphone, and there you go. Just a few characteristics of leaders. Let's just talk about that. First of all, leaders lead. They lead in work, in living, in giving. They do what they say, and they don't ask you to do anything that they're not willing to give or to do. They live in lead in giving as well. Leaders create community. Leaders unify. For some of you that are young ministers just going out in the field, my advice to you is when you go to a new center, first order, not make a bunch of changes, don't do that. First thing, get to know your people. Get to know them and love them. Let them love you. And you can do anything when that comes. But you got to get to know them. Let me give you an example of how you might do this. I did this much later in ministry for me, and it's one of the best things I ever engaged in. It was called The Great Question. And I invited the congregation to come and make half-an-hour appointments with me. And I had a great question to ask them. They didn't know what it was, but they were going to come because in meditation, it always happens in meditation, doesn't it? This guidance came to me and said, you look at your congregation, and there are thousands of years of experience in front of you every Sunday morning. Thousands, because of the number of people that are there in their collective ages. Why don't you draw on that wisdom? So that's what I did. That's what the Great Question was about. So one of them I asked people about healing. I took notes. This takes a lot of work. At Fort Myers, I did it with 70 to 90 people. That's a lot of half-an-hour appointments. I took notes. Out of that came a lesson series with their wisdom blended with mine. And I did a report that's probably still on our website, I'm not sure, about what the key thoughts were of people about healing or whatever our subject was. And boy, did I get to know the congregation. It was a wonder. We cried together. It was a beautiful thing. So that's one. Right? So I'm getting to know them. Second thing is, every year, first Sunday of the new year, we would always establish a theme. And there was actually a big wooden sign that had the theme, whatever the theme was. It was on the sign as people were coming in. And it had to be on a refrigerator magnet. And so we put it on a refrigerator magnet. And everybody left. They got a copy of it. I think the last one when I was there, I got it from Starbucks. I was in Starbucks and they had one of those little cards where they want you to fill them up with money. And there was a heart. And then it had a little arrow there and it said, you were there. And so that was our theme. You were there. You were there. So I would say to the congregation, where are you? And after a while, they would say, here. We're in each other's heart. So that was our theme for the year. And every year for 5 or 6, 7 years, whatever it was, that's what we did. And then the second and third week, I would share a series called Principles to Live By. 2 principles each week. And of course, they had to be on a what? Refrigerator magnet. And we gave them at the third week of the year. But they were pithy little statements like, wait 3 days. Start with what you have. It is done. So it is. All different kinds of things that we kind of took hold of. People would carry those forward for literally for years, some of them. But those things unify the congregation. They unify us. Leaders go deeper and rise higher. And so what you do is you put in your contract with your board that 3 days out of every quarter, you can go off by yourself, not vacation time, but time for reflection and prayer. I used to do this particularly in Spokane, Washington. I just took a steno pad, no books, no CDs, just a steno pad and a pen, and I would go by myself, and it would be 3 days of silence. Up at some monastery, the staff hated it, because every time I'd come back, I would have so many ideas, and oh God, here he comes again. You understand? So, leaders speak of their own authority, they go deeper, they rise higher. Leaders create momentum. You know the great principle, thoughts, or A body at rest tends to remain at rest. A body in motion tends to remain in motion. That's the way it is in ministry. Well, when your ministry has stopped, getting it going is a challenge. But being a leader, that's what you're there to do. But once the momentum is moving, it just will carry on its own. So there's lots of other things here. And Nancy kept saying to me, Jim, time it out, time it out. I said, how can I possibly do that? But I think probably you've been sitting attentively enough. And I just want to say thank you to Bob for giving me the opportunity to share something that's been on my heart for a while. And of course, it all sort of came up after you started this whole thing, after you gave me a call or sent me something. I can't remember. And so hopefully you will do what's my vision for my time with you, which is that to get you talking. That's all. That's what I'm thinking. Just to get you talking. And I have a whole bunch of handouts about, You guys are good. You're good. I'll find them here somewhere.
Jim, why did Unity stop putting that wonderful statement in every book when I first started 35 years ago or so, that unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus Christ? That was always in every book they published.
Yeah, it was.
Why did it disappear?
I don't know. I hope it didn't happen under my watch. It could have. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know when it stopped. But I'll tell you, I had to, even with some of my old books from way back, of course I know that I've never forgotten that. But I had to go rummaging through my books at home. And I finally found Prosperity. And that's
older edition.
And that's where I found it. So I don't know, but if it is something that truly resonates with us, we want that to be once again who we are and why we are. Then we can talk to our buddies at World Headquarters and see what happens. So God bless you all. Thank you. Yeah, we can put them in the back.